So the fall 2020 anime season has come to a close, and it's finally time for me to throw my hat into the ring and make a semi-relevant video. After all, I need views somehow. Although knowing my upload schedule, it'll be the fall 2023 season by the time this actually comes out. So what show do I cover? Well, I could talk about By the Grace of the Gods, which I dropped in 3 episodes, or Ochikabori Fruit Tart, which I dropped in 2 episodes, or even Kuma 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 Bear, which I dropped in 1 episode. Or maybe I could talk about Adachi and Shimamura, a show with an absolutely fantastic opening episode, and I put it on paused and haven't gotten back to it yet. Maybe I should go for the big catch and make a video about the new season of Attack on Titan. Oh wait, I forgot I'm only on season 2. Well, I guess I'll have to talk about the only show I actually finished this season. That being the one and only Tonikaku Kawaii. So what did I think of Tonikaku? Well, to put it simply, Tonikaku is a show with incredibly strong main appeals, but those appeals are constantly undercut by the show's lackluster cast of characters. But I know that's a pretty loaded statement, so let's dissect what I mean by that. First, let's talk about what this show does well. If I had to point to the 2 main appeals of Tonikaku, I'd say that it's wholesome and funny. Let's start with the wholesome. Tonikaku is a romantic comedy featuring the newly married couple Nasa and Tsukasa. However, there's a catch to this marriage. You see, Nasa and Tsukasa barely know each other. That's right. On the day they get married, they have had a total of 2 conversations with each other. This goes beyond just a rushed marriage. This is an awful idea in every conceivable way on every conceivable level. So with how clearly idiotic of an idea this marriage is, you'd think the anime would show the struggles of having to live and cooperate with someone you barely know. Maybe add in some screaming and crying for that sweet, sweet melodrama. However, Tonikaku actually does the complete opposite of this, by focusing on the successes of their marriage rather than the obvious problems with it. The main narrative of Tonikaku is showing Nasa and Tsukasa slowly progressing as lovers, with tons of I love yous and sexually charged hand-holding and cuddling and generally all the cute things that come with being in a relationship. Any drama that does happen in the show is low-key or has a comedic silver lining. I'd liken it most to how Ore Monogatari handled its relationships, if you've seen that. I'll be the first one to admit that there's a certain appeal to seeing a sparkly, wholesome, nigh problem-free romance unfold in front of your eyes, and Tonikaku captures this image almost perfectly. The second appeal of Tonikaku speaks for itself, the comedy. I wouldn't consider Tonikaku to be the funniest show out there by any means. Most of the jokes were only mildly funny at best. But enough of the jokes landed at a dense enough rate to keep myself consistently entertained by the dialogue. Insert comedy is subjective clause to cover my ass. But as I've been alluding to this entire video, Tonikaku is far from a perfect show. Oh yes, it's time to talk about characters. Tonikaku has 4 main characters: Nasa, Tsukasa, Kaname, and Chitose. However, even though they're all from the same show, these characters are vastly different in writing quality. So let's go down the list, best to worst, here we go.
先輩が女の子。
あ、おはようかなめちゃん。この子はですね。
先輩って女の子に興味あったんすか。私はてっきり勉強のしすぎで性欲も何もなくなってしまったのかと思った。
God is real and she's a silver-haired lolly named Kaname. Kaname is awesome. She's incredibly direct in the way she talks to people, and will say whatever she wants to without sugarcoating it, even if it's rude. She also loves teasing Nasa, and will do just about anything if it will provoke a reaction from him. Despite her somewhat abrasive personality, though, she never comes off as harsh or uncaring. You see, just as Kaname is willing to be blunt and rude, she's also more than willing to show how much she genuinely cares about certain people. It's this delicate balance between psychotic 4chan user and genuine care that makes Kaname such an immediately compelling character. Wait, aren't psychotic and 4chan user synonyms? Damn it, my sentence structure is getting worse every new script I write. However, what really puts the hypothetical cherry on Kaname's non-hypothetical character for me was her horniness. I am not joking. Kaname is peak horny, which instantly makes her the most relatable character in the entire show. The topic of sex doesn't embarrass her in the slightest, and she makes constant innuendos in her speech. In fact, she's so unembarrassed by sex that she, multiple times throughout the show, walks into the same room Nasa is bathing in without the slightest blush on her face.
そりゃここの番頭なんすから清掃くらいするっすよ。
っていうかいつから見てたんだよ。
You smug little bastard, I love you. Compare that to any similar scene from a harem anime and you'll understand why this trait endears me to Kaname so much. Kaname is the Narumi Momose that I wanted. The kind of girl who's forward with her speech and has this frenetic yet oddly charming energy about her. I just love Kaname so much, dude. Going down the list to numbers of I, can you tell that I'm taking German classes yet? We have National Aeronautics Space Administration. That isn't even a joke. He is actually named after that NASA. NASA is somewhat of an offshoot from the nice guy trope. He's kind-hearted, charismatic, intelligent, yet not very physically strong or manly. Wait. NASA is a harem protagonist, isn't he? Actually, not quite, because there's one major personality trait that makes NASA a fair bit different from Mr. Harem Boy over there. Said trait being pusillanimity. Nailed it! NASA is a bit of a nervous wreck. He's super jumpy and timid, as well as being easily embarrassed. He can be forward and he can be mature on occasion, but he's mostly just timid. This extra trait makes Nasa just different enough from your typical nice guy to be a decently engaging character. But there's a caveat to this. While most of the time Nasa is just decent, he becomes an incredible character whenever he's talking to Kaname. Kaname's bluntness, teasing, and constant innuendos are the polar opposite of Nasa's easily embarrassed, nice, and nervous self. Because these characters are such polar opposites, there's naturally a lot of friction between the two whenever they talk to each other. And this friction makes for some incredibly entertaining conversations.
きっと先輩は一生女の子にモテず30過ぎた時死んだ目で俺ついに魔法使いになったぜなんていうのそうだね魔法使えるねって優しく微笑むのが私の夢だったのに
そんな夢最初から持たないでくれる
Seriously, these two's conversations are the best part of the show by a mile and a half. Sadly though, none of the other characters play off Nasa nearly as well as Kaname does. And Nasa's personality on its own isn't enough to make him a truly interesting character. So, Nasa forever lives in the realm of being a mediocre character. On AniList.co, because they apparently forgot the M, you can click a little heart icon next to different anime characters to put them on your favorites list. So, for example, this is what my favorite characters list currently looks like. Ah, it seems the Monogatari fandom hates me. Now let's take a look at how many people put the characters from Tonikaku on their favorites list. 612 for NASA. Pretty respectable. Giving support to NASA for the future expeditions to Mars, very cool. It seems 720 people have discovered our true Lord and Savior and converted to Kanameism, not to be confused with the far inferior Haruhiism. 1.8 thousand people have committed treason and should be shot on sight. Alright, what about our last main character, Chitose? How many hearts does she have? Even the most ardent of Tonikaku fans would happily throw Chitose into a ditch right before running her over with their car if given the chance. While I was downloading the dubbed version of Tonikaku to use as footage for this video, on a site that was definitely legal, I scrolled through the comments on one of the episodes, and half of it was just people hating on Chitose. Even on the Tonikaku fan wiki, if you go to Chitose's page and scroll to the bottom, the only comment there is someone proclaiming their hatred for her. And if you watch the show, it's not hard to see why she provokes such a response. Chitose is, simply put, a brat. She's immature, selfish, incredibly stubborn, makes constant illogical, self-serving decisions, and overall, she's the kind of person you would want to stay far, far away from in real life. And all of this, with nary a single positive trait to back it up. In fact, she's so comically unlikable that it begs the question, is the viewer even supposed to like Chitose? Let me activate my second neuron to find the answer to that question. Chitose is, in a sense, the closest thing Tonikaku has to an antagonist. She's the only character in the entire show who is actively against Nasa and Tsukasa's marriage. Well, I guess there's also Aya, but her will is so flimsy that I hesitate to even count her. The reason why Chitose is against their marriage is because she's also in love with Tsukasa, and wants to marry her.
なんでお前なのよ。なんで何も知らないお前が姉様と結婚するのよ。姉様の願いを叶えられるのは私だけ。姉様と結婚するのは絶対私の方なんだから。
Because of Chitose's love of Tsukasa, she goes out of her way to try and ruin their marriage through various illogical schemes, at one point going so far as to kidnap Nasa. Yeah, that actually happens in this show. Everything I've just described makes Chitose sound like some cartoon villain, and probably not the kind of character the writers ever expected you to like in the first place. But here's the thing. Despite everything I've just said, it is fairly evident in the way Chitose is written that she was supposed to be, to a certain extent, likable. She's shown in moments of weakness and sadness, she has a sympathetic, albeit vague, backstory, and she even has a character arc. Don't get your hopes up about the character arc, though. Her personality doesn't really change all that much. From all this, I think it's readily apparent that, yes, the writers did want the viewer to, if not like Chitose, at the very least understand her motivations enough to the point where they don't outright hate her. Judging from the fan reaction, I don't think it worked. But honestly, although Chitose is far from being a likable character, I can't bring myself to hate her. Chitose's negative traits are so comically overblown that it loops back on itself to become actually kind of entertaining. And to be fair, I think this is what the author was going for. That being said, an unlikable character is an unlikable character, and she isn't nearly entertaining enough to make up for how much of a brat she is. So, up to this point, I've talked about Kaname the goat, Nasa the lukewarm cup of coffee, Chitose the somewhat tasty piece of pizza that was thrown away. Okay, just accept my analogies, okay? All that's left is my absolute least favorite among Tonikaku's cast. Prepare your Scoville ratings, because this take is spicy.
Tsukasa is the worst character in Tonikaku, and I would rather shove an M1903 Springfield down my gullet than watch another second of her presence on screen.
Yeah, baby! That's what I've been waiting for! That's what it's all about! Woo!
Tsukasa is, without a doubt, the fan favorite of Tonikaku's cast. She's cool, elegant, and mature, yet she blushes like a little girl. She's nerdy, she's cute, she cooks, she cleans, she loves you unconditionally. She's perfect. Tsukasa's character seems to be crafted as some sort of idealized version of a woman. In fact, half the time she came off more like some inhuman perfect deity to me than an actual human being. Tsukasa is certainly a character with a lot of redeeming traits, but I'd like to pose you a question. Is having redeeming traits really the same thing as that character being good? I've found that the answer to that question is no. Now, what I can concede on is that for the audience to be able to root for a character, they need to have at least a few redeeming qualities. Even Light Yagami from Death Note was generally upstanding and respectable outside of the whole murder biz. So basically, all of a show's non-villain characters should have some redeeming qualities. However, those redeeming qualities on their own aren't what make a character truly great for me. I get attached to characters because they have eccentric or interesting personalities, or because they're multifaceted, or because they interact with the other characters in an engaging way, or maybe because their personality is so close to mine that they expose flaws within myself that most of the time I'd rather sweep under the rug. Tsukasa definitely has redeeming traits, but the show gives no reason beyond that as to why I should get invested in her character. And that, to me, is just boring. Now, I'm not trying to say that you're stupid if you like Tsukasa. It's clear that a lot of people really do love her, probably because she has so many redeeming traits. But Tsukasa is definitely not for me. The imperfect, abrasive, but charming Kaname will always be my choice for best girl. So, to wrap this video up, this show pisses me off! The main character is laughably bland and wishy-washy to the point where even the characters in the show get irritated and... What the fuck? Okay, I'll be serious for a moment. Tonikaku is a fine show. Its two main appeals are not only executed well, but are present throughout nearly every scene of the show. But during my watch, I couldn't shake the feeling that the show was wasting a lot of its potential. Around the same time as I was watching Tonikaku, I stumbled upon another show called Ore Monogatari, or in English, My Love Story. Ore Monogatari has nearly the exact same conceit as Tonikaku. Both are romantic comedies with an emphasis on being cute and wholesome. Hell, the inciting incident for both of these shows' plots has to do with vehicles. Yes, you can get that specific when comparing these two shows. But what sets Ore Monogatari apart from Tonikaku the most for me is that it was everything I wanted but didn't get out of Tonikaku. Remember back at the beginning of this video when I said that Tonikaku captures this image almost perfectly? Me saying it was near perfect was not an accident, because the show that did it perfectly was none other than Ore Monogatari. And that's not the only thing that Ore Monogatari does well. The comedy is just as funny, if not funnier, than Tonikaku. The three main characters are some of the most charming and fun I've seen in ages. Ore Monogatari is nothing short of greatness. Let me reiterate, Tonikaku is a fine show. For what it's worth, it was entertaining the whole way through. But it's hard for me to give Tonikaku even a light recommendation when it's so obviously overshadowed by Ore Monogatari. If you liked Tonikaku, you will love Ore Monogatari. Unless you're Civ, shut the fuck up, Civ, you piece of... And if you didn't like Tonikaku but just absolutely need your wholesome rom-com itch to be scratched, I highly recommend it. Who knows, I may even review Ore Monogatari on its own someday. But for now, it's time to rest. I've made my semi-relevant point about a semi-relevant show in a semi-relevant video. It's time to return to my sleeping chamber and enter hibernation once more.